Hi, I'm Jeanne Fiorini. Thanks for being here at the Tarot Tips. Today, both of the examples I'm going to talk about, or the topics I'm going to bring up, have to do with rules. The subject today is when are rules helpful and when do they stand in the way of something else that might be trying to happen. The first thing I want to talk about is in response to an email that I got from a subscriber asking about the elemental dignities. And I'm going to read some of the questions that I received just to illustrate how complex and complicated this idea of the elemental dignities can be. So let me just preface it by saying that the elemental dignities is a conceptualization of how elements in the tarot support each other, have a neutral effect, or one might impose a detrimental effect on something else. It can get very complicated. It can almost get mathematical in its application. So not surprisingly, the subscriber had many questions about, well, how does this actually work and how does it impact how I interpret what comes up on the table? So some of the questions she asks were, do the cards influence each other both ways, let's say in a 3-card spread, or do the outside elements only work on the center card? Another question, do the cards have to be exactly adjacent to affect some sort of influence? And then what happens if you've got more than a 3-card layout? Let's say you've got the Celtic layout. Where do these layers of influence impact in a 10 or 11 card layout like the Celtic spread? And then I won't go through all the questions, but her last question I think is a very good one. How can elemental dignities be used with reversed cards? So not only do we have this idea of what happens when a card is reversed, but what happens when two elements maybe which are ill-advised or ill-matched come together? What does a reader do with that? So I'm not here to diss elemental dignities. What I am saying is that to me this is an example of how a system or a conceptualization around the tarot can take us totally out of our intuitive reaction to the cards and put us right in our brain. What's this saying? What's the right answer here? What's the appropriate way to be reading these if I'm going to be considering this idea about elemental dignities? So the first thing I want to say about it is, if you are a beginner, don't go there. Tarot is complicated enough. You've got court cards, you've got numbers to deal with, you've got elements to deal with, you've got all these different things as a beginner that you're trying to wrap your mind around. Don't even try to deal with elemental dignities. Which suit or cards might work well with others in the deck but might overpower other ones, that kind of idea. It's way too much for anybody who's trying to learn the tarot. For anyone else, I'm going to just say that anything like this, any conceptualization you use with intention. You say, even if it's the simple idea of reverse cards, which I've dealt with in other videos, am I going to pay attention to that or not? Let's say you've decided that, yes, I want to pay attention to this idea about how elements might work together or not work well together. And so set your intention ahead of time. Yes, I'm going to pay attention to some basic rules of hierarchy, in other words, here about the elements and how they interact in a layout. Or you could say, well, I'm going to pay attention to parts of this idea, but then I'm going to disregard the rest. My point here is, if you're going to work with this idea, don't go by the complicated book view and assume that that's important and that is correct. The correct way to read your cards is the way that connects you both to how you understand your tarot system as well as what intuition is trying to say to you. So here's another thing that I've always tried to convey in my tarot videos is that to me the best readings are a combination of what you know about the cards and what intuition or spiritual guidance or whatever you want to call that other is trying to convey. It's a concrete system, but it allows this more fluid flow of information to come to us. And so if I'm going in my brain, automatically I've got damn stops there that say, oh, that's not right, or oh, I don't know, what's the rule about that? So don't let the rule, any rule with tarot, whether it's about the dignities or anything else, get in the way of your immediate connection with the cards. So I think I made my point about that. The second thing I want to talk about in this reading is from an example from an actual reading that came up the other day that I thought was so kind of poignant in how it supported what the individual needed in that moment. So her question was, can I ever get my weight under control, my physical weight? She struggles with having too much weight on her physical body, lifelong struggle for her. So her question was, will I ever lose the weight? So the first thing there is I'm going to rephrase that question. I'm going to assume that she can, and it's just a question of, well, what's going to be the right method? So number one, we rephrase the question to, okay, give me some tools, show me what I need to pay attention to in order to lose this weight. So out of the whole entire pile, she draws the Page of Cups, the Knight of Cups, and the Lover's card. Okay, so you could lay those out in front of you with whatever deck you might happen to use. And I think the first thing that you'll see there is that this is an emotional issue. 2 cup cards and then the Lovers. This is not something that can be solved intellectually or worked with effectively intellectually. This is an emotional issue. We need to deal with it in emotions. Page and Knight of Cups. The other thing that it implies here is that diets, rules, regimens, eat 3 hard-boiled eggs, in the morning and, do whatever you want the rest of the day. Anything like that is not going to work for her. This is a very fluid combination of cards, Page of Cups, Knight of Cups, and then the Lover's card. So really the message she got was to listen to herself. Pay attention to the emotions around eating, around what she really wants, what she really deserves. I think there's a little bit of treating yourself in this combination of cards. Do what feels good if you're really listening to your body. Now, I'm sure there are people out there saying, well, it would feel really good to eat a package of Oreos. Yeah, maybe for 10 minutes, but is it going to feel good later? I don't know. So anyway, what we see here is allowing, through emotional connection with oneself, to come into partnership with the body. So let's look at that Lover's card for a minute. What's that about? The Lover's card is about making choices from the heart, making choices from authenticity. So saying, yes, this is what I'm going to do because this is what makes me feel real and true and in balance with myself. So we could look at that Lover's card and say, okay, here's a journey to coming into balance with yourself, having your heart and your physical body being in balance with one another, supporting what the body really needs and what the heart really needs. We can see kind of that nice coexistence and happy, separate but different energy in the Lover's card there. So certainly this person got permission to don't follow the rule about dieting because that's not going to work for her. It's too logical, linear, analytical, and somebody's going to say, well, to heck with the rule, I want a cookie. This combination might say, well, have a cookie if that's really what you want, and balance it out somehow later in the day. Okay, so it's not that rules are meant to be broken, but we don't want to let the rules in our life, or especially, to the point here about the tarot tips, you don't want to let any rule or outside parameter restrict your connection with the cards, your connection with your intuitive voice, and your connection with your higher self or your spiritual guidance. Okay, I hope that's helpful. Beginners, stay away from the elemental dignities. It's too complicated. All right, thanks for being here. See you next time.